Okay, we're going to talk now about some of the most common or popular or terrible computer and network security attacks. And specifically in this one, we're going to talk about denial of service attacks, man-in-the-middle attacks, malware, and phishing. So a denial of service attack is basically the least sophisticated of all types of attack. They're often conducted by something that's called a script kiddie, which is basically somebody who doesn't really need to know anything about programming. You just download a script that runs a certain attack. And very often you're not stealing anything. The purpose of a denial of service attack is in the name. It's to deny service. And a lot of these have become, well, very big lately. And they've been widely publicized. And oftentimes around Christmas, somebody will attack the Xbox Live or the PlayStation Network and take those offline. And that's a denial of service attack. Or very recently, someone attacked the Dyn DNS service and took them offline. And that was a denial of service attack. And the purpose of a denial of service is to just shut down service. Basically, overwhelm the servers that are used to provide a service so that nobody else can access them. One way that you might do this is called a Smurf attack. And basically, you're sending a whole bunch of pings or ICMP echo requests that look like they are coming from the server that you want to attack. So the server's not sending them, and you're not sending them directly to the server. What you're doing is sending these ping messages out to a whole bunch of other places and spoofing the IP address or making it look like these requests are coming from a specific server when in fact they are coming from you. And basically what this does is basically turns all of the ping messages that you sent out and responds, and each of the messages, so basically what this does is it takes all of those ping messages that you sent out. You send them out to a whole bunch of different machines, and each of those machines then sends a response to the server that you're targeting, that spoofed source IP address, which then becomes the target IP address for the ICMP echo response. So you send out a whole bunch of echo requests, and a whole bunch of echo responses come back and nail that server and overwhelm it and shut it down. Basically, these have been completely eliminated by anything resembling modern equipment. They're not very common anymore. It's not going to happen anymore. Mostly what we see instead is a DDoS. This is a distributed denial of service attack. And the way a DDoS works is instead of sending a whole bunch of requests from one computer and spoofing some destination or some source IP address, you're sending requests from a whole bunch of computers all over the place. And typically, that's going to be from what's called a botnet. And a botnet is a bunch of computers that are under your control, whether completely or partially under your control, and you can send out commands. And you can buy a botnet relatively cheaply if you're interested. They're illegal, don't do it. But you can buy a botnet for $500, $2,500. I'm sure you can get them for more expensive, depending on the size of the botnet that you want, the number of computers that you want access to. You can also rent a botnet for $2 an hour or $5 an hour. You can rent a botnet to take down your competitor's service. It's really cheap because it's really, really easy to create a botnet. And we'll talk about one very large botnet pretty soon here. The benefits of this really is partly to take down competitors. Some people might do it just to show that they can. Some people might do it to cause chaos. There's the idea of hacktivism, which is basically social protest using computers and things like a denial of service attack. And down below here, I've listed a whole bunch of maps. This is what one of those maps looks like. This is the Norse IP Viking map. And this shows real-time denial of service attacks being distributed around the world. And there's a lot of them. You can watch this map. It's very cool to watch. You can watch the missiles ping in from across the world to try to take out services in various places. It's very cool stuff and also a little bit scary. So another type of attack is called a man-in-the-middle attack. And this is a little bit more targeted. Well, more targeted and smaller scale. In a distributed denial of service attack, you're trying to take down a service. In a man-in-the-middle attack, basically, you're trying to snoop. You're trying to listen and potentially modify traffic if you want to. So you, just like in this diagram here, the attacker inserts itself as the middleman between the victim and wherever it's trying to get to. And typically that's going to be on the victim side. You're going to do it, set it up in a coffee shop, and you'll set yourself up as a man in the middle. And all the coffee shop traffic goes to you and then gets sent out to the internet. And the point of being that man in the middle is to be invisible. You don't want people to know that they're being snooped on or to know that you're listening in on everything that they send, but you are. And so you're trying to stay hidden while at the same time you're trying to gather as much information as possible, either from one victim or from several victims. If you ever see free public Wi-Fi, a free public Wi-Fi access point somewhere, that very well could be someone setting themselves up as a man in the middle to listen in on all of the traffic that's coming through their free public Wi-Fi. So be careful with those. The way you set up a man in the middle, very often, if you're not just going to set yourself up as a free Wi-Fi access point and connect and hope people connect to you, another way to do it is through ARP poisoning. Remember that ARP, the Address Resolution Protocol, stores a list of MAC addresses associated with IP addresses, and it stores that in a cache on the computer. Well, if you can poison that ARP cache and basically tell a computer that I am the default gateway instead of the real default gateway, then that computer is going to send all of its traffic to me, and then I can forward the traffic to the default gateway, and nobody knows any better. So by poisoning that ARP cache and saying the IP address stays the same, but the MAC address now points to my computer instead of to the actual default gateway, we're setting ourselves up as that man in the middle, meaning all traffic comes to me. I can send it to the default gateway. When the default gateway responds, it can send it either to me or directly to the computer, depending on how I set it up. And I can listen in on all of the communication that's happening. So that a lot of times, very often, that's happening through ARP cache poisoning. So the man in the middle, basically a bad guy proxy server. So a proxy server is a server that you route all your traffic through, and this one is one that you don't want to route all your traffic through. And you can do anything you want with the unencrypted data. You're a little bit more limited. If the data is encrypted, then you're kind of out of luck, and you're not going to be able to get through to read that stuff because it's going to be encrypted. And hopefully, if they've got a good certificate and a good certificate authority, then you don't have to worry about your encrypted data. So you could probably connect to free public Wi-Fi and access Gmail without any problems. But you got to be careful on any unencrypted websites. So you can do a lot of fun things if you set yourself up as a man in the middle. Again, only do this if you have permission, but you can do things like flip all the images that are sent to a computer, or replace every website. No matter what website you try to go to, you're going to go to kittenwar.com. And this link in the slides has a whole bunch of other ideas that you can do if you can set yourself up as a man in the middle or as a proxy server, which is less of a bad guy thing to do. So malware is a huge security threat and a huge security risk, and I feel like it used to be more broadly talked about than it is now. In the earlier days of the internet, everybody was talking about all the big viruses that were going around and all the big malware that's happening. Whereas a lot of times now, the attack that's happening, that's hitting your computer, is going to be exploiting a security vulnerability as opposed to an executable program that you're basically giving permission to run, even though you didn't mean to. But there's a lot of ways that these viruses can get onto your computer. Whether you're visiting shady websites that have shady download links, or torrenting shady video files and getting shady downloads that way. Unsolicited email forwards with attachments. Don't download attachments. Don't download images that you weren't expecting to receive. And a lot of these worms specifically, their primary purpose, and viruses infect your computer and they can do all sorts of stuff to it. The basic difference between a virus and a worm is that a worm then tries to infect other computers. And it can do that in a whole bunch of different ways. A virus is content to just infect you, or infect one computer at a time, slowly and in a more targeted fashion, whereas a worm tries to self-replicate and send itself all over the place. A Trojan is like that shady video link that I was talking about, where you have a real file that you actually want, whether it's a video game or a movie or an image or something like that, something that you actually want, and hidden inside that or along with that is something that you don't want, essentially a virus. So I highly recommend that you don't hide file extensions on your computer. Windows enables this by default. Mac, I think, enables it by default too. I always unclick it because funnycats.jpg.exe, when you hide file extensions, just looks like funnycats.jpg. And that makes it just that one little tiny bit more likely that you're going to click on the wrong thing, open the wrong file, and install or give access to a virus on your computer. A lot of times these destroy or steal data, but even more often, especially now, they're used to set up a botnet. And if your computer gets compromised by a virus, what that virus is going to do is sit in the background and wait for instructions to initiate a denial of service attack or to do basically whatever this botnet controller wants it to do. So a very, very big botnet recently was the Mirai botnet. And this basically, this worked by compromising Internet of Things devices, specifically and most frequently IP-enabled closed-circuit TV cameras or surveillance cameras or security cameras on networks. And if these were internet connected, they had a default username and a default password. And if you didn't change the default username and passwords, within about 5 minutes, someone from this botnet would have scanned you and compromised your security camera and basically set it up as a bot, one of the zombies on this botnet that's able to do all sorts of things, including conducting distributed denial of service attacks. And the first major one was against the Krebs on Security blog and his website, because he writes stuff about security, and people who do shady things and illegal things on the internet tend not to like that. And the biggest and most widely influential attack that originated from this Mirai botnet was on Dyn, the popular DNS provider. And that affected Netflix, that affected Box.com, that affected a lot of websites. Because if you can't get to DNS, well, I don't know the IP address of Netflix. I don't know the IP address of Box.com, right? So if I can't get DNS, which is the provider for Netflix and Box and all these other websites, then I'm not going to be able to get to those sites. And so by compromising that basically single point of failure, nobody was able to get to those sites for quite a while. And it was able to work because it's able to generate tons of traffic. The numbers I last saw had 50,000 devices. And these 50,000 devices generated up to 280 gigabits per second of traffic. Now, if you think a really, really fast home internet connection is 1 gigabit per second. So, and that's like, less than probably 1% of our country has access to 1 gigabit per second of home internet. So 280 times that is what they were able to generate during this attack to take down something like the Dyn DNS provider. So be careful, change your default passwords, don't use the default passwords, and be careful what internet-enabled devices you're bringing into your home. So another type of malware, and a very malicious and kind of scary type of malware, is called ransomware. And ransomware works a little bit different than the others. So some of them that are creating a botnets, they're going to sit in the background and you're not going to see them, and you're never even going to know that it's there unless you're looking for it. Others compromise your stuff, delete your files, mess with your computer. Those, again, used to be more common probably in the 90s and early 2000s than they are today. But ransomware is very common today, and it's a brilliant money-making scheme from people who are willing to do illegal activity. And the way that it works is it gets on your computer, and in the background, it's encrypting all of your files. until all of a sudden you wake up one morning and open your computer and all you have is a little message that says, pay us $500 or you'll never see your files again. And they charge you to decrypt it, and you pay them with Bitcoin or they delete your files. And they typically give you a pretty short deadline. They'll give you a week to do it or 2 weeks, and then they really will just delete all your files and it'll go away and you'll never see it again. So this is big business. There's the Crypto Wall company that runs, or the Crypto Wall is one of these popular ransomware applications, and it makes a lot of money. $350 million there. And I don't remember when that number was from. It's fairly old. And police departments and hospitals and lots of organizations end up paying CryptoLocker and these ransomware companies to decrypt their data, because if they don't have good backups, or even if they do have good backups, sometimes it's easier to pay the $500 than to restore everything from good backups. So the last type of attack we're going to talk about is phishing. A very important thing to think about. The weakest part of any system is the people who use it. So ransomware, viruses, those only really can spread or spread most often because people plug USB drives into their computers that they shouldn't be plugging in, or people click on attachments that they shouldn't be clicking on, or people download shady links that they shouldn't be downloading, or they're opening emails and responding to Nigerian princes. In the case of a phishing attack, the Nigerian prince is one sort of type of phishing attack. Typically what we talk about with phishing attacks are emails that come from what looks like your bank, or what looks like Yahoo, or what looks like something, and tries to get you to click on a link, go to their website, and enter your username and password there. A lot of times organizations will get big phishing attacks where they'll send out a IT security fraud or IT security breach and say, click this link quickly as soon as possible and update your username and password. When really, what that's sending you to is something like bankofamerica.com.scamsite.xyz. Remember what we know about DNS. Scamsite.xyz is the domain name. And whoever paid for scamsite.xyz can set up anything they want before that, including bankofamerica.com.scamsite.xyz. So if you don't know what DNS is and you don't know what's going on, you're going to look and you're going to see, oh, bankofamerica.com, I'm good to go. Don't do that. Watch out for that. And browsers are taking more and more steps to make it more obvious that you're not necessarily on bankofamerica.com, even though you think you are. But hopefully you don't think you are, because you know better, because you know DNS. So you go to bankofamerica.com.scamsite.xyz, and they've copied Bank of America's website, and it looks exactly like Bank of America's website, and you enter your username and password, and if you're lucky, it might even forward you to bankofamerica.com, so you may never even know that you put your password in the wrong place. Well, I say if you're lucky. Mostly what I mean is if you're unlucky. If you are lucky, you will enter in your username and password and immediately realize you've made a mistake, and then actually go to bankofamerica.com and change your password. But even that, don't do that. Just don't click on links from your fake bank. Another more targeted form of phishing is called spearfishing. And, well, that's what the security people call it. So spearfishing is, like I said, it's targeted phishing where you have selected one or several targets within an organization, and you're going to spend a little bit more time doing your research and specifically targeting that person or that organization. And by making your emails look more legitimate, then you're possibly more likely to be successful in your phishing attempt. A generic phishing attack, you're going to send out hundreds of thousands or millions of emails, and you're lucky if you get 1% of people to respond and click on your link. But because sending emails is basically free, again, especially if you own a botnet, then it's not that big a deal. Spearfishing, you're going to spend a little bit more time and a little bit more effort. And I say you, I'm referring to you, the scammer, not you, the person watching this video, because we don't do illegal things. But you're going to spend more time doing your research, crafting that email to look as legitimate as possible, putting in some personal information, putting in some maybe insider knowledge to to do that and to get a better response rate on your phishing attacks. So how do you protect yourself? For one, always install operating system patches. Always, always, always. Do it as soon as possible. Within an organization, you're going to want to do a little bit more testing. But for a home user, unless you have a very good reason not to install operating system patches, you need to do that quickly. Run some sort of antivirus. Like I said, show your file extensions. Run some sort of backup. Please, 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 if you get nothing else out of this video, back up your stuff. And we'll talk more about backups in just a second. Spyware checkers. Spyware is a lot like malware, but really its purpose is to sit on your computer and learn about you, usually from tracking your browsing or a keystroke logger or something like that. There's separate software that'll search for those and delete spyware from your computer if you like. So backups. Please have backups. And with backups, there's a 3-2-1 rule. And the 3-2-1 rule is to have 3 copies of your data, 2 of those copies on 2 local copies on different media, meaning maybe you have your regular computer and then an external hard drive or a local backup drive or what's Apple call those things? The time capsules, right? There's different ways that you can basically be backing stuff up locally. And the benefit of the local backup is that when you lose something, it doesn't take that long to restore it, right? You can download 8 gigabytes across a local network very, very quickly, or hundreds of gigabytes across a local network very, very quickly. But you also want 1 offsite copy. So 2 local copies, 1 offsite copy. I recommend something like CrashPlan. That's what I use. Backblaze, Carbonite. These are backup providers, and they will do things that something like Dropbox, which is good. It's better than nothing. The problem with Dropbox is once you delete a file from Dropbox, eventually that's deleted from Dropbox's servers as well. So it's not quite a full backup. CrashPlan, you could delete a file on your local computer and it's going to be on CrashPlan servers forever. Meaning, if somebody wipes out your computer, you can still get up on CrashPlan servers and download it, even if you don't notice it right away. Where Dropbox, I think the default's 30 days. And after 30 days, you can no longer access those files on their servers. So 3 copies of your data, 2 local copies, 1 offsite copy. So important to have that offsite copy because your house could burn down, or a tornado could hit it, or it could flood, or a lot of things, or someone breaks in and steals your hard drives and your laptops and your desktops, and you lose all of that. And so much of our lives is on computers now that it's extra, super duper, triple important to have that offsite backup that no matter what happens in your house, you're able to get access to those files again if you need it. And that's it. Those are the security attacks and a little bit of information about how to protect yourself.